Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a topic that underpins so much of our digital lives, often without us even realizing it. I'm talking about the fundamental human need for reliable and secure data storage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something we almost take for granted now.
Think about it. Every photo, every important document, every piece of critical business information you create needs a place to live, right? A home that's safe and accessible.
Mm.
While that might sound simple enough, the moment decentralization enters the picture, this seemingly straightforward act becomes incredibly complex, endlessly challenging, and frankly, incredibly exciting.
It truly is a foundational challenge of our digital age. How do we move beyond relying on single points of control or failure?
Right.
How do we ensure our digital assets are not just accessible, but genuinely safe from censorship, data loss, or, malicious actors who are constantly evolving their tactics?
Exactly.
That's precisely where the decentralization aspect shifts from an abstract concept to an absolutely critical design principle.
That's precisely the challenge, isn't it? And it leads us directly into today's focus. We're taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of decentralized storage networks, often abbreviated as DSNs.
DSNs, yeah.
Now, you might have heard of some of the bigger names in the space, like, say, Filecoin.
Sure, Filecoin is probably the most well-known.
But today, we're going beyond the headlines and the general concepts. We're actually venturing into the cutting edge of research, pulling back the curtain on a brand new paper that promises to redefine how we think about the very security of these networks.
Indeed. Our primary source for this deep dive is a fresh academic work titled Adaptively Secure Blockchain-Aided Decentralized Storage Networks, Formalization and Generic Construction.
Quite a title.
It is. And this paper is the result of collaborative efforts by Shandyu Su, Yuma Tamagawa, Mario Larangera, and Kisuki Tanaka, a formidable team of researchers from the Institute of Science Tokyo and Input Output Global.
That's right. And this isn't just theory that's been sitting on a shelf. It was just recently updated on the Cryptology ePrint archive.
Very recent.
Listed as paper 225887, with its last revision on May 20th, 2025. So we're talking about highly relevant, very current research that's still evolving.
And what's truly fascinating here, and what sets this paper apart, is that it's not merely an incremental improvement. It makes a significant claim.
Oh.
It presents what they believe is the first adaptively secure UTXO blockchain-aided DSN.
The first adaptively secure one using UTXO. Wow.
Yes, this isn't about tweaking existing models. It's about a fundamental reformalization that addresses critical, previously overlooked security gaps. A foundational shift in how these systems are understood and built.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Our mission for this deep dive is to dissect exactly how this paper achieves that groundbreaking claim.
Right.
We'll explore how it meticulously addresses those critical security gaps that, you might be surprised to learn even existed in something as seemingly robust as a decentralized storage network.
Things you wouldn't necessarily think of initially.
Exactly. And how it offers a robust, practical blueprint for the future of decentralized data custody. You're about to discover some genuinely surprising insights into what truly makes these networks secure and why this research is, without a doubt, a game changer for anyone interested in the future of data.
It really promises some key insights. Let's get into it.
All right, so with that intriguing setup, let's establish the foundational understanding of decentralized storage networks. What exactly are we talking about when we say decentralized data storage?
Well, at its very heart, decentralization is a universal design strategy, right? You see it applied across everything from power grids to political systems. And what's its primary overarching goal? It's simple, really, to avoid single points of failure.
Right. Avoid putting all your eggs in one basket.
Precisely. If you centralize control or a resource, you create a vulnerable choke point. Think about traditional cloud storage, your photos, documents, business data. It might all sit in one giant data center owned by a single corporation.
Like Google Drive or Dropbox.
Exactly. If that data center goes down due to a natural disaster, a cyber attack, or even just, a technical glitch,
Oof.
all your eggs are in one basket, as you said. Decentralization inherently spreads that risk, distributing data and control across many independent entities.
And then when blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, DLTs, burst onto the scene, this concept of decentralization found entirely new and incredibly powerful applications.
Oh, absolutely. A huge catalyst.
Suddenly, we had robust, tamper-proof tools for anti-censorship efforts, where data couldn't just be unilaterally shut down or altered by a single authority.
Yeah, the big one.
And crucially, we gained unprecedented public verification of actions. You could truly see what was happening on a shared, immutable ledger verified by a network, not just a central server.
This is exactly where decentralized storage networks, or DSNs, really come into their own. They apply this very principle, the distribution of the power and risk, directly to data storage.
Okay.
Instead of entrusting your precious files to one giant cloud provider, DSNs rely on a network of independent participants.
Right, the nodes.
These participants, often called storage nodes, volunteer their spare storage capacity to keep copies or replicas of user data. It's akin to a global cooperative of data keepers, you could say.
Like a distributed hard drive network.
Kind of, yeah, where no single entity holds all the keys or all the copies. This inherently means distributing risk and preventing any single entity from controlling, or, worse, losing your data.
So how does that actually work in practice? We're talking about individual storage nodes. Could be anyone, right? Hobbyist with some extra drive space or a professional data center.
Exactly. Anyone who volunteers to keep these replicas.
Right.
But it's not just a passive act, though. It's definitely not just a trust me system.
Right. You can't just hope they're doing it.
These nodes aren't just taking your data and hoping for the best. To prove they are honestly storing the data, they must provide what's called a proof of replication, or POREP, to the rightful data owner.
POREP.
And what's truly critical here is that these proofs aren't just kept private between the user and the node. They're confirmed and actually published on the blockchain.
Ah, so it's public verification.
Yes. This creates a public, immutable, and verifiable record, which is absolutely crucial for transparency and accountability within the network. It means anyone can, in principle, verify that the storage agreement is being upheld.
That's the real magic, isn't it? For you, the user, the main benefit is a rock-solid guarantee that your data replicas are genuinely being kept safely for an agreed-upon period.
That assurance.
This dramatically enhances security against all sorts of threats, from natural disasters wiping out a centralized data center to simple data loss due to hardware failure, or even, malicious dilution attempts by a single rogue provider.
It covers a lot of bases.
Compared to traditional centralized storage where you're putting all your faith in one company, DSNs represent a massive leap in data resilience and censorship resistance.
Definitely. And it's a significant but. While the promise of DSNs is immense, the journey from this robust concept to practical, truly secure implementation has been, as the paper notes, fraught with numerous technical challenges.
Ah, the implementation hurdles.
It's one thing to have the theoretical idea of distributed storage, quite another to engineer a system that works reliably, efficiently, and is genuinely secure against sophisticated, intelligent attacks in the real world.
Speaking of challenges, let's dive deeper into the nuances of proof in storage because it's fundamentally different from what many people might associate with blockchain's more common proof mechanisms.
Right. It's not just POW or POS.
Exactly. We've all heard of proof of work, or POW, right? That's where computational power is the resource, like Bitcoin mining, where miners expend energy to solve complex puzzles.
A classic.
And then there's proof of stake, POS, where your financial tokens are locked up as collateral, aligning incentives with network security.
Also very common now.
Those are well-established paradigms that secure many of the largest blockchain networks. But DSNs shift the focus to a lesser explored, yet incredibly promising resource space.
Storage space itself.
Yes. This is where things get truly interesting because proving you're actually storing data and not just pretending to introduces a unique set of cryptographic challenges that are distinct from proving computation or stake.
It's a different kind of proof needed.
And the most basic form of this is proof of space, or POSpace. That's a well-known cryptographic approach for proving you've allocated a certain amount of storage capacity.
Okay. Seems simple enough on the surface.
On the surface, yeah. It sounds straightforward. You prove you have the space.
But DSNs need something far more sophisticated than just proving you have empty space. This is where proof of reproducibility and proof of replication, or POREP, come in.
Okay, POREP again, the advanced version.
These are advanced flavors that extend POSpace. The significant feature here is that they provide publicly verifiable guarantees that a prover, in our case, a storage node, is actually using its storage space to keep multiple unique replicas of a given piece of data.
Multiple unique replicas, that's key.
It's crucial. It's not just proving you have some space, but that you're effectively utilizing it to store my specific data in a resilient, redundant, and verifiable way. It ensures that the data is not only stored, but also unique to the prover and can be retrieved.
And a key building block in many existing DSN protocols, like Filecoin, is something called proof of spacetime, or POST.
Post, right.
This is a public coin pour-up system, meaning the challenges that nodes receive are publicly verifiable and they're issued periodically. It's a continuous automated check, essentially, to ensure the data remains stored over time.
Like ongoing spot checks.
Exactly. And even with these sophisticated proofs, DSNs still face significant technical hurdles in practice.
Oh yeah, plenty. How do you definitively verify that servers are genuinely keeping the claimed replicas and not just faking it? Maybe regenerating data on the fly or leveraging some external resource.
Good point.
How do you ensure a truly fair data exchange when a client wants their data back at the end of the contract, especially when the server has already been paid for its services?
The retrieval part, always tricky.
And how do you manage collateral effectively to truly incentivize honest behavior and penalize cheating without creating economic inefficiencies? These are the practical, real-world considerations that, as we'll see, have presented considerable gaps in existing formalizations of DSNs.
And those gaps are precisely what this paper sets out to address, to move DSNs from promising concepts to truly robust, production-ready systems. Let's shift gears now to the core participant dynamics and blockchain's traditional role in these networks.
Okay.
At a high level, a DSN involves two main types of participants. On one side, you have the clients, or sometimes groups of clients, acting as one entity who are delegating their data for storage.
The data owners. And on the other side, you have the servers, which are the storage nodes we just discussed. Their fundamental job is to preserve the replicated forms of that data over an agreed-upon period.
And the client's ultimate goal
Is always to be able to retrieve that data whenever they need it, intact and uncorrupted. That's the bottom line.
makes complete sense. And in any practical network, especially a decentralized one that involves providing a service, there has to be an economic model to make it sustainable.
Right. People need to get paid.
So an economically practical DSN typically charges clients based on the size of their data and the duration they want it stored. That's pretty standard for any storage service.
Sure. Pay for what you use.
But the crucial part that distinguishes a DSN's economic model and what makes it trust minimized is its reliance on collateral.
The skin of the game.
Exactly. Servers put up a financial stake, a form of digital insurance to prevent them from cheating. Cheating could mean claiming more storage than they're actually using, deleting your data prematurely once they've been paid, or failing to produce a valid proof when challenged.
So the collateral acts as a bond.
Precisely. This collateral provides a strong, rational disincentive for dishonesty. If they fail to perform, they lose their stake. Simple as that.
Makes sense.
So given this setup, how does the blockchain traditionally fit into all of this? The paper highlights two primary traditional ways blockchain protocols are leveraged to aid DSNs.
Okay, what are they?
First, and pretty intuitively, it facilitates payments and the transparent management of that collateral among participants, usually through blockchain financial tokens like bitcoins or similar cryptocurrencies that exist on the chain.
Right. The blockchain acts as the secure, transparent financial backbone. Makes sense.
And second, and equally critical for the integrity of the system, it provides an immutable ledger.
The tamper-proof record.
Yes. This unalterable distributed record serves as irrefutable evidence for every stage of the data's journey. Its initial delegation, the continuous submission of proofs for its preservation, and eventually, its retrieval. It's the public, tamper-proof notary, making all key actions verifiable by anyone at any time.
So, payments and proof. That covers the basics.
So with this foundational setup, distributed nodes, economic incentives, proof of replication, and a blockchain for payments and immutable records, it sounds like DSNs should be pretty robust, right? We have all these pieces in place.
Seems like it should cover most things.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because despite the seemingly solid groundwork, the current literature, as this paper points out, has considerable gaps in the formalization of such model.
So the formal models were lacking.
Exactly. This is where the authors of our paper have identified crucial, previously overlooked vulnerabilities that could undermine the very promise of DSNs.
This raises an important question for anyone building or relying on these systems. If the foundation seems so sound, where exactly are these gaps?
That's what we need to unpack. Let's dive into that now. All right, let's dive into the critical analysis, into what this paper identifies as the unpacking the critical gaps in existing DSN architectures. And the first, perhaps most surprising gap, they call the blinding spot: lack of formal threat model for proof of replication.
Yeah, this one's a biggie. Perhaps surprisingly, most current POREP protocols, even those that are blockchain-aided, lack a truly thorough and rigorous security definition. Specifically, they're missing a clear and comprehensive analysis against what's called an adaptive adversary.
An adaptive adversary.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
This isn't just a generic bad actor. It's a sophisticated opponent who can observe the network, learn from previous interactions, and strategically adapt their attacks over time based on what they've seen. They're not static. They learn and evolve.
An adaptive adversary. That sounds particularly insidious. Can you give us a concrete step-by-step example of what that kind of malicious behavior would look like in this DSN context? Because this sounds like a very clever attack. Certainly. Imagine a scenario with an adversarial node within the DSN. This node is designed to exploit its access to the blockchain itself, and critically, the periodic publication of proofs.
Okay.
Instead of genuinely storing the data locally, persistently on its own hard drive, it uses the blockchain as its own cheating storage.
Cheating storage. How?
Here's how. When challenged to prove it still has the data, it might initially possess the data and provide a valid proof. Okay, fine. But immediately after that proof is recorded on the blockchain, it cleverly deletes the data from its local storage.
Deletes it.
Potentially, yes. Then, for subsequent challenges, instead of regenerating the proof from genuine local data, it uses the blockchain itself, which is an immutable public record of past proofs as a reference.
Okay.
It simply says, hey, I already proved this once. Look at the blockchain record. I'll just derive my new answer from that public record.
Wait, so the malicious node isn't actually keeping the claimed data at all after the initial proof? It's just looking up its own previous answers or some related data on the blockchain and sending back what appears to be a fresh, valid proof for the next challenge.
That's the potential attack vector, yes.
That's incredibly sneaky and fundamentally undermines the whole point of a DSN.
Exactly. This means the malicious node doesn't need to actually keep the claimed data on its local storage, which completely undermines the purpose of a DSN guaranteeing persistent data preservation. This tricky scenario does not seem to be covered in the available DSN literature, leaving a significant and very subtle vulnerability unaddressed.
Wow.
It's like a security system that can be tricked by its own logs. The very record meant to prove honesty is being manipulated to facilitate dishonesty. It creates a perverse incentive for the malicious server to offload its actual storage burden onto the publicly verifiable blockchain.
That's a fundamental security flaw. If exploited, it collapses the entire purpose of a DSN, which is to guarantee data preservation over time. You'd think that would be one of the first things you'd secure against. But this paper reviews it was a significant blind spot in previous formalizations.
A real depth.
It's a true aha moment for you as a listener, realizing how deep these vulnerabilities can run.
Indeed. And that leads us to another critical oversight identified in the paper: the neglected power of the UTXO model.
Okay, the UTXO model. Now, many of our listeners will be familiar with different blockchain models. You have the account model, which is how many popular blockchains like Ethereum operate.
Right, stateful accounts.
Where balances and states are stored in accounts, kind of like a traditional bank account where your balance just changes. But then you have the UTXO model, or unspent transaction output model, which globally underpins currencies like Bitcoin and Cardano. Can you remind us of the key difference and why it's relevant here?
Sure. The core difference is how the blockchain state is managed and verified. In the account model, you have a global state that tracks every account's balance and contract state. When you send money or interact with a smart contract, the global state is updated. It's more intuitive for many users, perhaps, as it resembles traditional computing.
Yeah, it feels familiar.
However, in the UTXO model, there isn't a single mutable global state. Instead, it tracks individual unspent outputs from previous transactions. These act as discrete, self-contained units of value or state.
Like individual coins or tokens.
Kind of, yeah. When you want to spend or interact, you consume an existing UTXO and create new ones as outputs. Each transaction essentially builds on prior unspent transactions. It's more like handling physical cash than a bank balance.
Okay. And the paper focuses specifically on the extended UTXO, or UUTXO model, which is a powerful evolution of this, used by Cardano, for instance. What's the advantage there, and why is it so potent for DSNs?
The EUTXO model takes the core UTXO concept and introduces much more expressive validation scripts. Think of them as little programs attached to the UTXOs.
Smart contracts, essentially.
Sort of, yes. This allows for the implementation of general state machines, meaning more complex logic and sophisticated contract interactions than simple transfers, while crucially retaining what the paper calls semantic simplicity and the UTXO model's inherent security properties.
Okay, more power, but still simple underneath.
But here's the game changer for DSNs. EUTXO's validation of state transitions is solely determined by output-input pairs within the current transaction context. It doesn't need to maintain or refer to a historical, mutable global state, unlike the account model.
Ah, it's all local to the transaction.
Exactly. This
Mhm.
makes validation more deterministic, more localized, and inherently more parallelizable. It's easier to reason about what a transaction will do because you only need to look at the inputs and outputs involved.
Ah, deterministic verifiability. So this deterministic and self-contained nature in EUTXO allows for a much tighter and more secure integration of complex DSN transactions directly into the blockchain protocol design. Why is that so profoundly important for security definitions, especially against those adaptive adversaries we just discussed?
It's vital because this tighter, more deterministic integration paves the way to a more expressive and adaptively enhanced game-based security definitions, which are absolutely vital for robust collateral and payment management within a DSN.
How so?
If you can deterministically verify exactly what's happening at each step of a transaction, precisely what inputs are consumed and what outputs are created, it creates a much stronger basis for designing secure financial incentives and penalties that are immune to manipulation. You can literally encode the rules of the DSN contract directly into the UTSO scripts themselves. The validation logic is the contract enforcement.
You can build the DSN rules right into the money system itself.
That's a good way to put it. And here's the truly surprising part, the major oversight this paper highlights. Surprisingly, such approach for DSN design was not proposed yet, to the best of our knowledge.
Really? No one had formally done this for DSNs with ETXO before.
Apparently not in this rigorous, adaptively secure way. So this robust, deterministic model, with its clear advantages for security and complex state management, seemingly ideal for DSNs, was a significant untapped opportunity in the field until now.
That's a huge gap that this paper is filling, almost like discovering a powerful tool that was sitting right there waiting to be applied.
Indeed. And it extends to critical issues of trust and finality in the economic interactions, which is our next gap. Challenges in payments and data retrieval.
Right, the money side. Let's talk about deterministic payments and collateral management in practice. We already discussed how a financial framework is absolutely necessary to incentivize nodes to honestly keep data. Without it, why bother?
No incentive, no storage, simple economics.
But what does that look like over the entire contract period? It's not just one payment, right?
Usually not. A common approach in DSNs is what they call the trickle-back scenario, after an initial upfront collateral deposit by the server.
The skin in the game we mentioned.
Right. The DSN servers don't just sit on that collateral for the entire contract duration, locked away. Instead, they can gradually reclaim parts of it alongside user payments as they continuously prove they are keeping the data through periodic proofs of replication.
Ah, so they get rewarded incrementally.
Exactly. This continues throughout the custody period, a bit like a self-liquidating bond. They get paid a little, get a bit of collateral back, as long as they keep proving storage.
So they get paid a little bit at a time, and a bit of their collateral is released back to them as they perform their duties. That seems like a good incentive structure, keeps them honest along the way. But what's the critical gap here that current protocols miss?
The critical gap is intuitive, but often overlooked in formal models. Until the contract period truly ends and the data is safely retrieved or confirmed to be permanently stored, there must be enough funds, enough collateral remaining locked on-chain to cover any eventual data loss or to hold the DSN accountable for a breach of contract.
So enough money needs to stay locked until the very end.
Absolutely. Current proof-of-storage protocols often don't offer such a practical, rationally incentivized design that truly guarantees this. It's about ensuring skin in the game until the very end, preventing a scenario where a server, having received most of its payments, decides, hey, not worth keeping this data anymore because its remaining financial incentive has dwindled to almost zero.
Right, they could just cut their losses and run if most of the money's already paid out.
Precisely. And this is where EUTXO's promise comes in again. This detailed, deterministic management of payments and collateral can be deterministically carried with a UTXO blockchain, implementing financial tokens, resulting in a rational incentive framework for security.
So the determinism allows for a much more precise, transparent, and secure handling of these funds throughout the entire life cycle of the data contract. You can literally program the rules for collateral release into the transaction scripts.
Exactly. The rules are code, enforced by the blockchain itself. And the final piece of this puzzle of economic fairness is fair and accountable data retrieval. This is a crucial last step after the contract period is over, especially after servers have already received most of their payments for the storage service.
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
You've stored your data, you've paid for it, you've seen the proofs, and now you want it back. What's the specific risk here if it's not handled correctly?
The risk is a malicious network or malicious server at the very end. If the network is maliciously controlled, or a specific server is a bad actor and the final payment has already been made, or collateral fully released.
They have no reason to cooperate anymore.
Right. The data could simply be discarded or held hostage. There's no longer an economic incentive for the server to keep it or provide it. The original data owner relies entirely on the DSN for that final retrieval, and if the system isn't designed correctly, they could be left high and dry.
So, what's the ideal solution to prevent that kind of last-minute betrayal? How do you ensure they actually give the data back?
It is paramount that the exchange of funds, meaning the retrieval of the remaining collateral for the server and the delivery of the data to the client, are performed atomically.
Atomically, meaning?
Meaning it's all or nothing. Either both actions happen successfully or neither does. Servers should only receive all the remaining collateral when the user safely receives their data back. For example, the decryption key might only be released when the payment collateral release is confirmed on-chain.
Ah, like a simultaneous swap.
This is the definition of a fair exchange. Think of it like a secure escrow service for your data. Neither party can cheat the other at the very end of the agreement. It's a simultaneous all-or-nothing exchange, ensuring no one is left shortchanged.
These are truly critical gaps. It's not just about building a decentralized network, but about building one that truly works in the face of sophisticated, adaptive adversaries and, rational economic incentives.
Exactly. It forces you to think beyond just distributing data and into the intricate choreography of incentives, proofs, and finality.
It forces you to think beyond just distributing data and into the intricate choreography of incentives and proofs.
Precisely. And identifying and addressing these gaps sets the stage for the paper's core contributions and its new, robust design.
And what a stage it is. Let's jump into the core of this deep dive. The paper's contributions heralding a new era for DSNs. This is where the solutions to those critical gaps begin to emerge, and where theory meets practical, secure design.
Right, the payoff.
The paper's authors describe their work as, and I quote, a thoroughly described, secure, UUTXO-based DSN.
And they acknowledge they faced several technical challenges, in addition to the current limitations in the state-of-the-art of the area, as they put it, but they systematically tackled each of them.
How do they summarize their contributions?
The paper summarizes its contributions into three significant interconnected areas. First, they put forth a formal and rigorous description of a blockchain-aided DSN protocol that is specifically tailored to EUTXO transactions.
Okay, formal and rigorous, so mathematically precise.
Exactly. This isn't just a loose idea. It's a precisely defined, mathematically grounded system that considers every interaction, every edge case.
So it's not just a sketch, but a full architectural blueprint. What's the second contribution?
Second, they offer a thorough description of a practical EUTXO-based DSN. This implies it's not just theoretical cryptography that works only on paper. It's a design that could realistically be implemented and function in the real world, considering efficiency and usability.
Practicality matters. And third?
And third, and critically given our earlier discussion, they provide a security analysis showing that our protocol is adaptively secure by providing rational security guarantees.
Adaptively secure. There's that term again.
That adaptively secure part is huge, as it directly addresses that blinding spot, that cheating storage attack we talked about, and other adaptive threats.
And what's the bigger picture impact they're aiming for?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture for the industry, this isn't just an academic exercise confined to a research paper. This work aims to be a blueprint for later UTXO-based blockchain-aided DSN protocols.
So setting a standard.
It genuinely sets a new standard for how these systems should be designed and analyzed for security, especially for those building on or considering the EUTXO model. It's laying down foundational principles for others to build upon.
A blueprint is a powerful idea. And that blueprint takes the form of a groundbreaking four-phase protocol, which is our next segment. This protocol truly leverages the UTXO model for DSNs in a novel way.
Yes, it formally defines the syntax and security properties of a blockchain-aided DSN protocol, specifically tailored to the extended UTXO-based transactions.
And this structured, phase-based approach is key to addressing the vulnerabilities, right?
This structured, phase-based approach is precisely what allows them to systematically address the previous vulnerabilities and ensure the atomic, deterministic interactions we discussed. Let's break down the four phases they've meticulously defined.
Okay, phase one.
Phase 1, the preparation phase. This is essentially a one-time setup that generates the public parameters for the entire system. Think of it like setting up the rules of the game.
System setup. Got it.
Then you, as the client, take your raw data, what they call D, and pre-process it. This involves encoding it into a formatted version, D, using a secret encoding key.
Why the pre-processing?
This is a very clever, proactive step because this pre-processing ensures the data is resilient against certain types of deletions and tampering it as redundancy or structure. And it generates a public data tag that can later be verified on-chain.
So you repair the data for secure storage before it even goes anywhere.
Exactly. Before anything even leaves your device, it's being prepared for integrity and verifiable storage. This pre-processing is absolutely essential for building in integrity from the ground up.
Okay, makes sense. Phase two.
Phase 2, data delivery, or the delegation phase. This was where the actual off-chain delegation happens. The client physically transfers the prepared data D to the chosen server, S, like uploading a file.
The actual data transfer.
But the critical part for the DSN security and long-term verifiability is what happens on-chain. The client and server jointly issue a contract transaction, TXCon, to the blockchain.
TXCon, the contract transaction, what does that specifically do on the blockchain?
This TXCon is packed with crucial information. It embeds all the contract metadata, a unique identifier for this specific storage agreement, the total period the data will be stored, and validity intervals for all the subsequent transactions within this contract.
So all the terms and conditions?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But crucially, it also locks the client's payment for the storage service and the server's collateral right there in a UTXO on the ledger.
Funds locked on chain.
Exactly. And what's truly innovative here, according to the paper, is that this is the first UTXO-based DSN that supports publicly verifiability without the intervention of the client.
How so?
Once that TXCon is on-chain, anyone observing the blockchain can see the terms of the contract and verify that it's live and the funds are locked. The client doesn't need to be online for subsequent verification steps. The blockchain itself holds the state.
That's a huge step forward for transparency and automation. It shifts a lot of the verification burden from the client to the network itself, which naturally brings us to phase three.
Phase 3, automatic test via proof challenge or the preservation phase. This is where the magic of continuous hands-off verification happens throughout the contract period.
The ongoing checks.
That's right. Throughout the entire contract period, the server, S, periodically and automatically submits test transactions, TX test, to the blockchain.
TX test transactions.
Each TX test embeds a publicly verifiable proof, remember those proofs of replication we discussed, guaranteeing that the server is still storing the replicas of your delegated data.
So the pour-up goes into these TX tests.
Exactly. And crucially, no client interaction is needed for this ongoing verification. The system is self-checking, entirely on-chain, and those proofs are continually published. This drastically reduces the client's burden while maintaining high assurance.
So you, as the data owner, don't have to manually keep pinging your storage provider to make sure they still have your photos or important business records. The network itself is constantly confirming it.
Right, it's automated vigilance.
That's a massive shift in how you secure data, moving from a reactive manual process to a proactive automated one. And finally, phase four.
Phase 4, data retrieval or the retrieval phase, the end game.
Getting your data back.
At the very end of the contract, the client, C, gets their data, D, back from the server. This process is facilitated by a TX-FIN or a finalization transaction published on the ledger.
2x FIN final transaction.
This TX-FIN is the conclusive step. It formally ends the protocol and ensures that the remaining payment for the server and the server's collateral are distributed based on the retrieval outcome. And the design is specifically engineered to ensure that atomic exchange we talked about.
The fair exchange part.
Meaning the server only gets their final collateral release if, and only if, the client successfully receives and decrypts their data. It ties the money to the successful data return.
This structured four-phase approach, deeply integrated with the deterministic UTXO blockchain, really promises to resolve those previous issues of verification, fairness, and the adaptive adversary problem by embedding robust, verifiable mechanisms directly into the core protocol flow.
It sounds incredibly robust, almost like a self-enforcing digital agreement.
It does. But to truly achieve that robustness and address the adaptive adversary, they had to tackle the core definitions of security themselves, right? That wasn't enough on its own.
Exactly. That leads us to our next point, redefining security with new adaptive properties for real-world threats.
Because the paper explicitly identified numerous gaps in the security definitions of previous DSN models and proof of replication constructions. This is where they had to get really granular and essentially invent new ways to think about security in this context.
Yes, defining the problem properly is half the battle. Their first major contribution here is adaptive replication soundness.
Okay, adaptive replication soundness. What's that?
The problem it solves is crucial. Directly attacking that blinding spot, that blockchain is cheating storage problem we discussed earlier.
Ah, the core vulnerability.
Existing definitions simply failed to capture scenarios where proofs are generated iteratively and stored externally like on a blockchain. This fundamental vulnerability allowed an adversarial server to leverage on-chain proofs to gradually reduce its storage commitment, as the paper describes.
So, to reiterate that ingenious attack, essentially, a malicious server could say, oh, I already proved I had this specific block of data on the blockchain 5 minutes ago. So for the next challenge, I'll just refer to that proof or some derivation of it instead of actually storing the data locally for the next challenge.
Yep, using the past proof to answer the present challenge.
And over time, by discarding data after each successful proof submission, they could offload more and more of their actual storage burden onto the immutable public record. That's a genius attack if you're the bad actor.
It truly is, and it's surprisingly difficult to counter without specific design choices. This new definition of adaptive replication soundness ensures that no adversary can break the security requirement throughout the entire contract period, even if it has access to prior proofs recorded on the blockchain via test transactions and can adaptively manipulate its local storage.
So how does it ensure that? What's the mechanism?
The mechanism involves proving that the succinctness, meaning constant size of proofs, combined with a property called rational replication soundness, under the knowledge of strong compression, CoSC assumption, is sufficient.
Okay, let's break that down because those are some heavy terms. Succinctness, constant size, we get that. Proofs don't grow too big, which is good for blockchain space.
Right, efficiency matters.
But knowledge of strong compression assumption, CoSC, and rational replication soundness. How do those prevent the adversary from cheating using old proofs?
Great question. The knowledge of strong compression, CoSC assumption, basically states that if a prover can generate a valid, succinct proof for a piece of data, they must have actually done the work to store that data, or at least have a highly compressed form of it that is genuinely tied to the original data and not just easily regenerated. It prevents them from just faking knowledge based on, say, the proof parameters alone.
So they have to know something substantial related to the data itself.
Essentially, yes. Then, rational replication soundness ensures that an adversary either has to use local storage comparable to the original data size, meaning they actually have to keep it, or they won't be able to answer the challenges in time to avoid penalty.
Why wouldn't they be able to answer in time?
Because if efficiently regenerating the data or the proof just from the compact blockchain record or manipulating old proofs is assumed to be too slow or computationally infeasible under these assumptions, trying to cheat becomes economically irrational. The cost or risk outweighs the benefit of saving storage space. It forces the adversary to actually perform the storage.
So it forces them to actually keep the data locally because trying to regenerate it or derive it from past proofs on the blockchain would simply take too long or be too computationally expensive to pass the periodic checks.
That's the core idea, and the key insight here is that a simulation extractable, which means non-malleable ZK snark protocol, is sufficient to achieve this.
Non-malleable ZK snarks.
And happily, as the paper notes, fortunately non-malleable protocols exist.
Okay. Simulation extractable and non-malleable. Can you unpack those quickly?
Sure. Simulation extractable simply means that if an adversary can successfully generate a proof, there must be a way, theoretically, for an imaginary extractor to recover the underlying secret information. In this case, the fact that they actually stored the data. It links the proof to the actual knowledge.
Okay. And non-malleable.
Non-malleable means the proofs cannot be easily altered or reused in a way that allows the adversary to create new, valid proofs without genuinely performing the required storage work again. Someone can't take a valid proof and just tweak it slightly to make it look like a proof for something else, or a proof for the same thing at a later time without redoing the work.
Ah, so you can't tamper with existing proofs to make fake new ones.
Exactly. This is crucial for preventing them from exploiting old proofs recorded on the blockchain.
Makes sense. Okay, so that's adaptive replication soundness. What's next?
Next, they define adaptive client fairness. This addresses the client's risk, especially at that critical retrieval phase we discussed.
Right, making sure the client doesn't get cheated at the end.
Absolutely. A malicious server could try to deceive an honest client by producing valid-looking concealed replicas that are actually useless or maybe corrupted.
Like sending encrypted garbage.
Or even forging finalization transactions that unlock the server's collateral without actually allowing the client to retrieve their data or providing a valid witness, like the decryption key, for extraction.
And the adaptive part here means the malicious server isn't just trying one simple trick. They're smart. They might have access to information from other retrieval sessions on potentially identical data, allowing for more sophisticated learned attacks, maybe exploiting patterns across multiple transactions or using malleability.
Exactly. This new definition extends traditional client fairness to that more realistic adaptive setting. It rigorously ensures that any honest client either successfully retrieves their data and generates a valid finalization transaction that refunds the server's collateral, or the server's collateral is forfeited entirely.
So either the client gets the data and the server gets paid, or the server loses their collateral. No in between where the client gets cheated.
That's the goal. It protects the client's interests to the very end, preventing data loss or extortion at the final stage.
And on the flip side, they also define server fairness. Because it's not just clients who can be victims of malicious behavior in a decentralized system, right? The servers are putting up collateral and performing a service.
Exactly. Fairness cuts both ways. This protects the honest server from a malicious client.
How could a client cheat the server?
A malicious client might try to learn information about the concealed replica, essentially get the data for free, perhaps by partially executing the protocol without actually providing the necessary final payment or completing the transaction that releases the server's collateral.
Trying to get the data without letting the server get their final payout.
Right. This definition requires that any honest server either has their collateral refunded via a valid finalization transaction, with the client successfully retrieving data, or the client learns absolutely no information about the data. It's an all-or-nothing proposition for the client as well.
So an all or nothing for the server too, ensuring they don't get exploited.
Yeah.
And how do they mitigate adaptive attacks on the server fairness side if a client tries multiple times?
They mitigate them by employing a one-time use key for each retrieval session, similar to an ephemeral key model.
Like a temporary key for each download.
Exactly. This means that even if a malicious client observes multiple retrieval sessions, the key used for each data retrieval is unique and short-lived, preventing them from leveraging information from one session to exploit another. This makes adaptive attacks much harder to mount, as the context is always fresh for each retrieval attempt.
These rigorous adaptive security definitions are absolutely paramount. They truly move DSNs from a theoretical concept with known subtle vulnerabilities to a much more robust, real-world ready technology capable of withstanding sophisticated, constantly evolving attacks.
It's about building genuine trust in these systems. And these comprehensive definitions aren't just theoretical constructs. They underpin the actual protocol construction, the how-to guide, which is what we'll discuss next.
That's right. Let's explore Section 4. The proof is in the protocol, construction and experimental validation. This is where we see how all these theoretical security guarantees translate into a workable, deployable system. Let's start with 4.1, the generic construction with robust cryptographic building blocks.
Okay, the nuts and bolts.
So what's the backbone of this protocol from a cryptographic perspective? What holds it all together?
The protocol construction is structured around a space-time POREP variant, that proof of replication over time we discussed earlier. This variant must satisfy both correctness, meaning valid proofs are always accepted, and that crucial adaptive replication soundness property we just defined.
So the POREP itself has to be strong.
Yes. And it also requires its implicit proof of retrievable commitment, PORC, to be binding. which basically means if you make a commitment to store data via the proof, you are genuinely bound to it, and it guarantees the data can be retrieved later. This strong POREP is the very foundation upon which everything else in the DSN is built.
And for that absolutely crucial fair data retrieval mechanism, the one that ensures atomic exchange so neither party can cheat at the end, what ingenious cryptographic approach did they adopt? You mentioned atomicity earlier.
They adopted what's called an encryption then adapter signature approach. It's a very clever dance between two primitives.
Okay, break that down. Encryption first.
First, they use standard symmetric encryption, SKE, for concealing the data replica. This means the server stores the encrypted data, and the client needs a specific secret key to decrypt it. Simple enough.
Right, standard encryption. What about the adapter signatures?
And then for the adapter signatures, this is where it gets really clever, especially for UTXO models, which, as we said, often lack the full Turing-complete smart contract capabilities of something like Ethereum.
That's a huge constraint for a lot of UTXO-based chains like Bitcoin or Cardano. So how do adapter signatures get around that to achieve atomicity without complex smart contracts? They seem kind of magical.
They do feel a bit magical. Think of adapter signatures like this. I, the server, have your data encrypted, and I want to get paid my final amount or get my collateral back. You, the client, want the decryption key. We don't trust each other to go first.
The classic standoff.
Right. Instead of just sending you the decryption key and hoping you pay, or vice versa, we set up a clever cryptographic puzzle using these adapter signatures. My signature needed to claim the final payment collateral is created in a special pre-signature form. It's incomplete.
Okay.
You, the client, can only complete my signature, allowing me to get paid, by using the secret decryption key. The act of you completing my payment signature simultaneously reveals the decryption key to you through the maths involved.
Whoa. So my payment is the revelation of the key?
Essentially, yes. My payment completion is cryptographically linked directly to your access to the data's decryption key. It's an elegant trick that allows for these simultaneous atomic exchanges even on blockchains that don't have full programmability. It creates a secure escrow for the data and the payment, enforced by cryptography.
It's an incredibly elegant solution for a tough problem.
Very cool.
And they also leverage non-interactive argument protocols for efficiency and privacy, right? Like ZK snarks.
Yes, extensively. For verifying the proof of replication itself in those TXS transactions, they use a zero-knowledge, succinct, non-interactive argument of knowledge, or ZK snark, protocol, which they denote as POREP-R.
ZK snark for the POREP. Why?
This ensures the server can prove they stored the data without revealing anything else about the data itself, zero knowledge. The proof is very small or succinct, good for blockchain storage, and it's non-interactive. No back and forth needed.
Got it. Any others?
And then for parts of the retrieval phase, specifically proving certain things were set up correctly, they use a non-interactive zero-knowledge proof of knowledge, or NIAZ-CAPO protocol, denoted as NIRET-R. These advanced cryptographic tools are crucial for the efficiency, privacy, and scalability of the proofs processed on-chain.
So cutting-edge crypto making it work. And bringing it back to the UTXO model, how do deterministic payments and collateral work in practice with these building blocks, ensuring that fine-grained control we need?
The paper meticulously outlines how validators, which are the small scripts that control how funds, UTXOs, can be spent in the EUTXO model, are specifically designed as signature verification scripts, but incorporating the logic from the proofs and adapter signatures.
So the spending rules depend on valid proofs.
Exactly. This ensures that payments and collateral are securely handled right within the EUTXO framework. Every penny, every collateral lock and release is tied to verifiable cryptographic conditions embedded in these UTXO scripts, like providing a valid POREP or completing an adapter signature sequence. The entire financial flow becomes deterministic and transparent. There's no ambiguity or central authority deciding when funds move. The math dictates it.
What about the on-chain signing process for setting up the contract? I noticed a fascinating, almost subtle detail in the outline about the server signing first. Why is that specific order so important? Seems minor.
It seems minor, but that's a subtle but absolutely critical security detail they identified. The base contract transaction, DCON, for the DSN agreement is jointly signed by both the client and the server, potentially using multi-signature schemes.
Okay, both need to agree.
But they specifically require the server to sign first. Why? Because the first challenge, GH1, which tests the server storage right at the start, is deterministically derived from the full contract transaction itself.
Derived from the transaction data.
Yes. If the server only signed after the client, they could theoretically see the client's signature, compute the final transaction ID, derive SHH-1 before the transaction's even published on the blockchain.
Ah, giving them a head start.
Exactly. It gives them additional illicit time to prepare the proof for that first challenge. This could potentially allow them to violate the strict timing constraints of the testing interval, or perhaps even engage in that offloading attack right from the get-go. By forcing the server to sign first, they commit their part before they can know the final transaction details and thus cheat H1. It closes this potential cheat H1 derivation timing attack.
That's incredibly meticulous engineering, thinking about timing attacks at that level.
It really is. It's a testament to the depth of their analysis and attention to detail in the protocol design.
And they even have an eye on scalability optimization, mentioning the optional use of recursive proof systems to reduce the number of test transactions on the blockchain. So they're thinking about the real-world implications like chain congestion, not just the theoretical constructs.
Absolutely. Recursive proofs, like ZK snarks that verify other ZK snarks, could allow a server to bundle many periodic proofs into one single on-chain transaction, drastically reducing the blockchain footprint. They're clearly designing for practicality.
What's fascinating here is how they blend established cryptographic primitives like ZK snarks and adapter signatures with novel applications like using adapter signatures for DSN retrieval on UTXO and a deep understanding of the EUTXO model's strengths and weaknesses.
It creates a technically sound and flexible framework. It truly shows the meticulous engineering behind securing these complex interactions in a truly decentralized environment, thinking about every angle of potential exploitation.
And to really drive home the importance of their security model, particularly the adaptive replication soundness part, they didn't just stop at theoretical proofs. They actually ran experiments.
Yes, they got their hands dirty with code.
Let's move to section 4.2, experimental motivation, unmasking randomness tampering attacks. This is where theory meets practice in a very compelling way.
This is a crucial and very insightful part of the paper. The authors conducted practical experiments to motivate and validate their security model, specifically simulating what they call randomness tampering attacks against a toy DSN-style protocol.
Randomness tampering sounds sneaky.
It is, and they even made the code available in an anonymous repository, allowing for independent verification of their findings, which is great scientific practice.
Good stuff. What was their setup for these experiments? How did they simulate a DSN in these attacks?
They created a dummy file consisting of 100 blocks, each 512 bytes. So, fairly small scale for testing. They committed this data via a Merkle tree, a standard way to represent data for proofs.
Okay, a small file and a Merkle tree.
Experiments were then run for 100 epochs, where each epoch involved a challenge targeting multiple, randomly selected block indices within that Merkle tree, essentially asking the prover, prove you still have these specific blocks.
And who were they comparing?
They compared an honest prover, who genuinely retains the full data throughout the 100 epochs, against various types of attackers who actively tried to minimize their local storage by offloading retrievable information to a simulated blockchain, effectively mimicking that cheating storage behavior we discussed earlier.
Got it. And they tested 4 different prover strategies, ranging from simple to quite sophisticated. Tell us about each of them and their implications. What did the attackers do?
Okay, first, the honest baseline. This is simply the control group doing what they're supposed to do. It shows the expected full storage over time, basically a flat line at 100% storage.
The good guy. Second, the plain proof attacker. This targets older or simpler protocols that might accept basic Merkle proofs without strong non-malleability or binding properties. This attacker achieves the fastest storage reduction in their experiments.
Fastest. How?
After successfully answering a challenge for a specific data block using a standard Merkle proof, they immediately delete that challenged block and its Merkle sibling from their local storage.
So they just throw away the data they just proved they have?
Exactly. Because the plain proof system doesn't strongly bind the proof to ongoing storage, the attacker can get away with it. It's a sophisticated exploitation of how basic Merkle proofs work if not used carefully. Imagine you're asked to prove you have page 50 of a book using a table of contents. If the system only cares that you once showed page 50, and then you're allowed to tear out page 50 and maybe page 51 immediately after, the proof system is fundamentally broken for proving persistent storage. Wow. That highlights why DSNs need proofs that are much more robust and resistant to this kind of proof-then-delete strategy. What about the other 2 attackers? They specifically target ZK-enabled DSNs, right? This gets even more subtle.
Yes, these are even more insidious targeting systems that use zero-knowledge proofs. The third is the subliminal channel attacker. This one targets hypothetical ZK-enabled DSNs where maybe only the data content is masked by zero knowledge, but the proof structure or randomness might still allow for information leakage.
Leaking data through the proof itself.
Precisely. It gradually leaks data by embedding small fragments, for example, a few bytes per challenge, into the proof randomness. So it's not deleting blocks outright, it's subtly transmitting the data itself, hidden within the random noise used to generate the ZK proofs.
Like Morse code hidden in static.
Kind of. Increasing this leak rate is not trivial, though. It effectively requires a proof of work to find specific random nonces that happen to encode the desired data bits. So this leads to a very slow, linear reduction of the need for local storage, as it can only leak a tiny amount of data per challenge. It's clever, but slow.
That's truly sophisticated, using the ZK proof's randomness against itself and the fourth attacker.
The compressible randomness attacker also for ZK-enabled DSNs. This attacker is maybe even more practical. It selects low-entropy nonces, essentially, nonces that are easy to compress and thus take up very little storage space themselves for the Schnorr-style proofs often used within ZK systems.
Low entropy, so predictable or patterned randomness.
Exactly. It stores only these tiny compressible nonces internally and immediately deletes the corresponding data blocks. This achieves rapid storage reduction because the attacker only needs to store a tiny compressible value instead of a full data block.
So they replaced the big data block with a tiny, easy-to-remember nonce.
That's the idea. It might incur some recomputation overhead when generating proofs later using these nonces, but the storage savings from deleting the actual data blocks typically far outweigh that cost.
Okay, 4 strategies. Honest, plain proof, delete after proof, subliminal, leak via randomness, compressible randomness, delete and store small knots. What were the key experimental results from these tests, particularly referencing their figures? It really tells a story about the vulnerabilities.
Indeed. Figure 12A in the paper shows the overall attack comparison. It dramatically confirms that the plain-proof attacker and the compressible randomness attacker achieve rapid and significant storage reduction compared to the honest prover. The subliminal channel attacker, while clever, is much slower and linear due to its limited embedding capacity per challenge. It barely makes a dent compared to the others.
So the most effective cheats were just deleting data after proving it, or replacing it with compressible randomness. And figure 12B shows the effect of nonce entropy on that compressible randomness attacker. What did they find there? Did using better randomness help?
It was quite revealing. As you'd expect, shorter nonce lengths, less entropy, more compressible, allowed for faster storage reduction. But they introduced biased randomness, which would likely make the attack detectable if the system monitored for such statistical anomalies.
Okay, so being too greedy makes you detectable.
But here's the truly surprising part for many. Even with nearly full entropy, using 255-bit nonces, out of 256, so very close to random, significant storage savings were still possible.
Still possible, even with good randomness. How?
Because deleting the actual data blocks, even when storing a large randomized nonce, ultimately outweighs the storage cost of the nonce itself. It proves that the attacker can still significantly reduce their actual storage commitment, even when trying to be stealthy and avoid detection by statistical means. The core issue isn't just the nonce quality, it's the ability to delete the data block at all.
Wow, so even good randomness in the proof doesn't save you if the proof system allows data deletion. And finally, figure 12C, the effect of challenge size. You'd intuitively think larger challenge sets, checking more blocks at once, would always be better for detection and security, right? More checks mean more security.
That's the intuition. And while larger challenge sets do increase the detection chance of certain attacks, as noted in prior work, without a proper proof system that enforces those bias properties, like non-malleability, larger challenge sets can actually accelerate the rate at which storage is discarded by the attacker.
Accelerate cheating.
If you challenge more blocks, and the attacker's strategy is delete after proof, then challenging more blocks just gives them the opportunity to delete more blocks faster. The paper provides a cumulative distribution function, showing how quickly all blocks get challenged under different challenge sizes, effectively demonstrating that more frequent or larger challenges can mean an attacker disposes of data faster if they aren't properly constrained by the proof system itself. It creates a perverse dynamic where trying to increase security actually helps the attacker shed storage faster.
That is completely counterintuitive. More checks can equal faster data loss if the checks themselves aren't strong enough. This is where it gets really interesting, because the paper makes a crucial, almost counterintuitive final remark from these experiments. This is a true aha moment for you, as it challenges a widely held assumption about zero knowledge.
Yes, and to profound insight based on these results. Their toy experiments demonstrate that, quote, zero knowledge is not a necessary requirement in DSN protocols when the primary goal is to prevent malicious provers from offloading internal storage with the aid of external systems, e.g. a blockchain.
Wait, what? Let me process that. So, zero knowledge, which we've spent years learning, is paramount for so many cryptographic applications and is often equated with ultimate privacy and security in this space. It's not the primary requirement for preventing these very specific, insidious storage offloading attacks. That is genuinely counterintuitive, especially for those of us who follow blockchain closely.
It definitely challenges common assumptions.
It makes me wonder, given how central ZK has become, what does this insight truly tell us about the nuances of security design? And where else might our current assumptions need reevaluation? Is ZK maybe overhyped for certain use cases?
Well, that's a crucial question, and it really highlights that security is not a monolith. Zero knowledge is incredibly powerful for privacy, for proving you know something without revealing what it is. It's fantastic for things like private transactions or identity verification.
Right, its core strength.
But when the specific problem you're trying to solve is guaranteeing data persistence over time and preventing a malicious actor from using the blockchain itself as a cheating storage mechanism, the core properties you need are subtly different.
So what are the core properties needed for this problem, according to their findings?
Instead, based on their analysis and experiments, it is the non-malleability and succinctness of proofs that fundamentally underpin the security of existing DSN constructions, like Filecoin implicitly, against these specific storage offloading attacks.
Non-malleability and succinctness, not ZK itself.
It's not just about efficiency, succinctness. It's because these properties inherently restrict the ability to encode and leak data through proofs, or, crucially, to reuse or manipulate old proofs to fake new storage commitments. The ability to tamper with or remold existing proofs, malleability, or for them to implicitly contain information that compromises security, like in the subliminal attack, is the real threat that non-malleability counters directly.
Okay.
So for this specific problem of proving ongoing storage against these adaptive blockchain leveraging attacks, it's about those unchangeable compact proofs, not necessarily the privacy aspect of ZK, which doesn't directly stop the delete after proofs or compressible randomness attacks.
That's a profound takeaway, really. It reshapes how you perceive the practical application of cryptographic primitives. You often get taught these concepts in isolation. Here's ZK, here's non-malleability. But then you see how they interact in a complex system like a DSN, and suddenly the specific nuances become absolutely critical.
It's all about the threat model.
It truly highlights that the devil is in the details of how proofs are constructed and what specific properties they truly enforce. You think you understand a concept like zero knowledge and its importance, and then research like this comes along and reveals a whole new layer of complexity and application-specific relevance. It's not that ZK isn't useful, but it might not be the magic bullet for this particular problem.
It's a testament to the ongoing rigorous analysis required to secure these complex layered systems. Security isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It requires deep, targeted understanding of the precise threat model you're facing and deploying the right cryptographic tools with the right properties for that specific job. Non-malleability and succinctness turned out to be key here.
Well, we've certainly completed a deep dive today, haven't we? My head's spinning a little with non-malleability and adapter signatures, but in a good way.
It's definitely a dense paper, but incredibly insightful. This research, as the authors describe it, is truly a major step forward in the state of the art for decentralized storage.
I believe it. What they've presented feels really solid.
Absolutely. This work offers a genuinely practical, adaptively secure DSN that is fully compatible with the EUTXO model by formally investigating security in what they call a rational setting, considering the economic incentives and potential cheating strategies of all participants.
Which is so crucial.
And by introducing novel, robust definitions like adaptive replication soundness, adaptive client fairness, and server fairness, this paper fills crucial gaps in the literature that were, quite surprisingly, previously unexplored or underdefined.
And it's not just theoretical navel-gazing. Those experimental results, showing the real threats of randomness tampering and the surprising true underpinnings of security, that non-malleability and succinctness are the real heroes against storage offloading, maybe even more than ZK for that specific threat.
That was a key insight.
It truly backs up their design choices. It's the perfect blend of rigorous academic work and practical validation, demonstrating both the what they built and the why it's built that way.
And the outcome. This proposed generic yet practical DSN protocol, along with its robust security framework, can truly be seen as a blueprint for future concrete implementations.
A foundation for others to build secure DSNs on UTXO chains.
It sets a new bar for how we approach decentralized storage security, especially for those building on UTXO-based blockchains like Cardano or others exploring the model. It provides a solid foundation for truly trustworthy data custody, addressing threats previous models missed.
It really feels like a step towards making DSNs ready for prime time, tackling those subtle but critical security issues.
Agreed.
So, the journey towards truly resilient, trustworthy, and decentralized digital infrastructure is clearly an ongoing one. It demands constant innovation and rigorous analysis like that presented in this paper. It makes you think, as you, our listener, navigate an increasingly digital world, relying more and more on distributed systems, sometimes without even knowing it. What other hidden vulnerabilities might still lurk in the technologies we rely on daily?
Good question.
And what surprising insights, what other aha moments, like the non-malleability versus ZK point, will be needed to truly secure our digital future against ever-evolving threats?
It's a question we should all keep asking, right?
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries of what's possible and what's truly secure, not just what seems secure on the surface.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive has given you a shortcut to being well-informed on this cutting-edge research and maybe inspired you to think more critically about the foundations of our digital world.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.